so politically impactful. She's saying, get me more vaccines. The CDC director in Washington is saying, no, you need to close that state down for a couple weeks. It's under control. Yeah, it's just ugly.
I know. I think the vaccine has given us a chance to relax and not worry about it. And not everybody's had the vaccine.
I think folks are. It's interesting. I think people want it to be over so bad.
Yeah.
They're just kind of trying to wish it into, and we all wish it would be over.
Yeah, I have lots of plans. How many of them will come to fruition? Who knows? I need the border with Canada to open up. I can't do anything about it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. But they are willing to hang on to your deposit until next year.
Yeah, and you got to spend 14 days stranded up there doing nothing, and then 14 days on the way back doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I got a buddy up there that he couldn't get up there at all. He owns a 14-acre island that we go to every year. There's one cabin on it. It's him, and that's it. And we go up there at least once a year. He wasn't even allowed in.
Yeah, we're my place.
And eventually he just said, I'm going in. Because they said, well, what happens if I go in? And they said, well, you can't do anything for 4 days or for 14 days. He said, good, I'll be on my island. Nobody will be around me. Nobody will be near me. I'll be there.
Signs on the dock.
Yeah, don't come in.
Play, stay away.
So he just said, the heck with it, I'm going up there like he always goes up there for the whole summer. And finally got in. Sorry.
There's a couple that owns a place near Telemark where my place is. They sold it. They haven't been able to come there for a year.
Really?
Yeah. And they don't know when it's going to change on the Canadian side, so they sold it for like cheap too.
Did they really?
Yeah.
And it's on a lake?
No, it's
just
not
your
on it.
Telemark.
But it's on the Birkenbinder.
Yep.
Those people are all high
So
is there quite a few
Canadians up in your area?
Yeah.
Is there quite a few Canadians in your
Yeah, try to
area?
get a hold of Jim, 'cause I know there's a rescue trailer on there.
So that was it.
Yeah.
You know, the Birkenbinder Association closed on Telemark. They bought it.
Yeah.
So the other,
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
They sold out
All right.
the golf course?
Perfect.
The golf course was already independently owned, and if you're interested, it's for sale, and somebody needs to buy it.
Yeah.
I really miss that golf course.
I sent
It was
an
six.
email last week.
It's a neat spot. It's beautiful. It's great. But I don't like to
Yeah.
4 feet off the middle of the fairway.
I sent
and
out
be
that
in jail.
virtual link to
Yeah,
they
take
did
it
a
to
really nice job of.
Don't golf course.
I've been-
doing that, but I just-
I've been so busy, I just haven't, I probably will.
I tried to play Dad used to own it, Telemark, and we used to go up there and
So what you just.
try and play. It was so unfair. It wasn't even fun.
At a time?
Or I know the mayor down
Yeah.
there. In fact, I can set up my own tour.
Yeah.
He owes me some beer. Or maybe it's the other way around.
And Carol goes, oh, is that a box? And I said, no. But the other cards will be.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I showed up to his flower shop one day and
See the bear up
given
there.
his
Oh, yeah,
wife
that's
was
nice.
manning the front.
On the golf course.
Get us on track here?
I started talking,
It's
I started
pretty
talking
cool.
to her.
I told them at the clubhouse,
Anyway.
they went right out and got the.
So are we ready to go ahead and get started?
Hey.
We just need a thumbs up from Joel.
What's that one mean?
Yeah, we were loud.
All right, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Michelle, you want to take roll
This
call?
conference will now be recorded.
Mayor Horn,
Here.
Alderman Kittle,
Here.
Alderman Lindell,
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Here.
Alderman Montello,
Here.
Alderman Volkert,
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Motion to approve the agenda?
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second to adopt the agenda?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comments. Does anybody wish to make a public comment at this time? All right, hearing none. Consent agenda. And before we get into the consent agenda, I'll say we probably pull the minutes because Nick has got to give us a little verbiage about the minutes from one of our previous meetings. So maybe a motion would be in order to approve consent agenda, with the minutes being addressed afterwards.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, but leaving the minutes approval to be out of there until afterwards.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, and that carries. And Nick, if you can address the minutes from the previous meeting.
I can. I'm just looking for the note. In any case, the correction that needs to be made relates to actions taken during the closed session. The action directed by the council with respect to the fire department funds was that all funds would be transferred over from the fire department to the city's finance office, with the exception of the dues of the fire men and women, which shall remain in a segregated account for their own use and the use that they intend. And so the correction, the minutes should so be corrected to make sure that it is absolutely clear that the city council had no intent to transfer over those dues funds, but only the other operational funds that are generated from fundraising activity.
Anybody any questions on that? Because the motion was explicit and included the dues money. That's how it's being interpreted. So we want to make sure our motion was interpreted correctly, that it did not include the dues from the fire personnel.
Exactly right.
Well,
Nick, sorry, I'm just wondering which minutes are we looking at, the March 8th or the March 22nd? I don't have them in front of me.
8th.
Okay, that's what I
8th,
thought.
I would guess.
Was it the 8th?
Yeah. Certainly
Sorry.
it's March 22nd.
it's not the 22nd. I'm just
It
looking.
has to be March 8th, Michelle.
I'll double check. I'm pulling them up now.
Anybody have any questions?
We haven't determined what those dues are.
We actually, so Noah actually has the number. I mean, it is broken out in there.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we have a specific dollar amount tonight, but it's, we can see what's donations from, Chile funds, dues money,
So the fire department did provide a print off back to 2017 from, quote unquote, the checkbook. And it is broken out, every entry in and every entry out, along with what is dues and what was collectively called the chili feed money, the fundraising money.
Well, I will say this, that it was the intent of the motion, as I remember it, to exclude those. Although I do want to ask a question. At what point should the city be concerned about some degree of fiduciary oversight relative to those funds? And Nick, I'm going to address that question to you.
Sure. And we've discussed this with the fire department as well. So the dues funds are funds that are earmarked, that are taken directly out of paycheck by the fire department members themselves. They are directing these funds to be used for personal or more informal uses rather than city operating use. And so, whereas the other funds, the funds that come from fundraising, from the chili feed, and from other activities that utilize city resources are to be administered by the city and overseen by the city, those contributions that are made directly by the firemen and women for the intended excess, I would say operations, or, independent operations of the fire department for things like soda, things like shirts. The more, sort of personalized activity are those that we felt appropriate being managed by the fire department itself.
Well, I guess my question really isn't the management, it's just, is it prudent that the employees of the fire department would actually request that the city have some oversight, not necessarily control of those funds, but some oversight just to make sure, 50 years down the road, that there's been established oversight, that's all. They can do with their money what they want. I mean, and that's what we're talking about. The employees of the fire department say, hey, we want to pool our resources to do, I think the term is pop and hot dog account. That's what I'll call it. Maybe it was popcorn and hot dog account. But anyhow, that's all. I'm sorry. To answer the question, yes, the intent was not that those funds come over here. I'm asking a separate question, which really probably isn't even relevant to the question you're asking. So I'll just stop.
Yeah, and I would note for Michelle's purposes that these are the minutes of the March 22nd work session.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right, then with that correction in mind, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of both of those meetings, the 8th and the 22nd of March.
So there's a motion to approve the minutes of the March 8th and 22nd meetings. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda, new business, ordinance 551, lead service line gooseneck replacement.
Our Public Works Director, Eric Evenson, will take this one. He should be on.
I'm on. Oh, sorry. Camera wasn't working.
And feel free, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know you don't get a whole lot of time on camera, but feel free to shorten your presentation if you so choose.
All right. I'll do my best. Good evening, Mayor and Council and everybody else in attendance. Summarize shortly, the city is seeking some funding to replace lead service lines from the DNR. The DNR recommends that we have an ordinance on the books regarding lead service lines. And so this ordinance would define what lead service lines are, and then makes it a requirement that once the city removes and replaces their side of the lead service line, that the resident then also replaces their side of the service line into their building within 180 days. And so it would be our recommendation to move forward with this ordinance 551.
Eric, I have a question. Do you have a cost estimate for the private side of what that would be for the resident? I mean, a ballpark. I know it depends on length and I know it depends on condition.
Yep. I think we're looking between $3,500 and $4,500. If we do receive this DNR grant, at least the first couple years of this program, the city would reimburse 100% of that amount to the property owner. We have 121 possible lead services, and our goal is in the first funding cycle to replace at least half of them.
Okay.
And is this something that can be put on a 10-year payment for prospective homeowners? I know we do that for sidewalks or 5 years or something like that, but you start giving somebody a $4,500 bill.
A lot of money.
I think we need to be working with these people.
Yeah, so, in the future, if those grant funds are remaining and there was a cost, we could look at something similar to sidewalks for perhaps over a 5-year period. So
Even 5 years would be almost $1,000 a month.
Year.
1,000 a year, yes, correct.
I think we just need to come up with something that works for folks. We want people to do it.
Absolutely.
We want those lines
Have to.
replaced. And we don't want to, we want to try to make the impediment, sorry, lead line, we want to make the impediment reduced. So yes, I think if we can offer some finance terms, that would be great. Something that's on the property, somebody sells, whatever. But I think we definitely need to do that.
Yeah, I think that's something we need to do also, a 50-50 cost share, something similar to the sidewalks. Apply for these grants every year, get as many as we can done. If there's only 120 in the city, if we need to set aside some money prior to the grants running out, I think it's important. I think it's important we get them all done as quick as we can get them done, especially if the grants are still available. So,
For full disclosure, I don't know if my house is on the list, but I'm assuming it is.
We have them all mapped out. Again, we would be kind of, we have a couple street projects coming up this year. So like South Pearson, for example, we would replace those as part of that project. So really the ordinance is, like Eric said, is just if we're, updating the street at that time, if only the city switches out the city portion of it, it can actually increase because you've disturbed that lead. It can actually create a hazard if the property owner doesn't replace theirs.
Mhm.
So that's really the purpose for the ordinance. But again, our hope would be that for this year and for next year, that there'd be no cost to the homeowner. That the DNR has really made a big focus for clean water quality, and we do intend that every city that applied this year is going to receive the full amount that they requested.
But if they didn't, at least we could subsidize each homeowner's deal. So you would just
Correct.
spread it out so it's a pro rata basis.
Yep.
If you didn't get 100% funding. But yeah, if I understand you right, the hope is that there's enough DNR money that it's zero cost to the homeowners.
Correct.
well, there will be for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee after that they will still, the DNR will still fund this grant system. So,
So you're, okay, I'm sorry. I thought we were kind of talking about a one-shot deal, but as these lead services are replaced,
yes,
there's some money available now. But in a
yes.
couple of years, who knows?
It may not
And
be
but
there
the city
anymore.
is going to continue to fix these lead service
We need to.
situations. Got it.
They would be.
So.
Yeah.
I know that brings up an interesting point then. Are you saying to folks, okay, good thing you got yours done early. There was grant money. And then 5 years down the road, there's no grant money. Sorry, that's $4,500.
Well,
That's why I'm so interested in making sure that we have a plan for after this DNR money runs out. We need a plan to subsidize people that haven't gotten them done yet. We have to do as many as we can now, because 3 years from now, we don't know if this money's going to be there.
But so our hope would be for this year, again, we applied for basically to fund half of them. And then for next year, basically apply for the remaining half, was really the goal. So,
Yeah. That's true. We got the
Our
cash.
third
for
isn't
it.
getting done in the next couple of years. So. All right.
I'm sorry, Alderman Lindell, are you trying?
Okay, I can make a motion
And suspend the rules.
and suspend the rules to make a motion to accept ordinance 551, replacement of Gooseneck lead service lines.
All right, so there's a motion to approve ordinance 551 and suspend the rules. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
that.
Second, is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
That motion passes. Item 7.2, ordinance 552, fats, oils, and grease.
Sounds like a band.
It's called fog. Yeah, I'm up again. So yeah, bad oils and greases can be a pretty big detriment to the sewer system, whether the pipes, lift stations, and even the wastewater treatment plant. Our current ordinance only has a real small paragraph stating that, businesses which can produce bad oils and greases need to have an interceptor or a grease trap. So our staff's feeling was that we need to strengthen our ordinance somewhat. So we came up with the proposed ordinance, and it pretty much defines fat oils and greases, and then states that they need to have a grease trap or interceptor installed, and then defines some terms as far as maintenance and annual inspections, and then also defines that they need to keep records of those inspections in case we have some issues, and staff can request those from business owners. And if we feel that they're not keeping up on their inspection and maintenance, we have the authority to enter and inspect the trap on this by the city. So it would be our recommendation, staff's recommendation, to approve ordinance 552.
And who's doing the inspections?
That would be most likely either from the building inspection department or one of the wastewater guys.
Does this come through committee?
Yeah.
It has.
Yep.
All right.
You've got in here, the user shall have the trap cleaned at a minimum once every 3 months. Do you know what the requirement is today?
In our ordinance, there is nothing. State
So-
ordinance is pretty vague. State statutes say that they should do it to keep it free and clear and passable by fluids. It's pretty vague. I went through a lot of ordinances and they're all pretty close in that 3-month range. It's also, in a lot of the recommendations that they should have them clean that often, if not more.
But if I understand you correctly, there's nothing in the ordinance now that requires a minimum cleaning schedule for a grease trap.
No.
So obviously, we got to make sure that businesses know about this. And then I do wonder, I'm assuming it's kind of like if you live in the country and you get your septic tank pumped. I think it's every 3 years the county requires now. You had to provide proof that it was done. You're just supposed to mail it in. I don't know if you've thought about the mechanism that we're going to ask businesses to provide that they've done it. But I guess I would be curious to find out how often some of these businesses are cleaning those traps.
Yeah, and so researching ordinances, a number of communities tackle it in different ways. Some, like you said, have to mail in their inspection schedules or once the inspection's been completed. Others actually require a permit for the business to be filed with the city. We don't feel it's a huge issue right now, so we didn't want to go to an extreme. We felt like this was kind of a good first step. We had some grease issues at the main lift station the past 6 months or so. We did send letters out to the downtown businesses, kind of reminding them they need to keep up on their maintenance of the grease traps. And it seems like the issues slowed down a little, and we haven't quite had those issues. So we felt like this ordinance would be kind of a good first step to make sure that businesses are complying.
Eric, it's Craig here. I understand that it's a first step. I get that, and it's a good idea. We need to maybe eventually, if we don't get any compliance, put some real teeth into this. I don't know really, other than keep warning them. We really don't have an alternative, like real teeth for the consequences if they just say, that's the way I do business, that I don't care about you guys. So I think eventually we're going to have to, if we don't get compliance and we don't get a better outcome for the fog, we need to put some teeth in this maybe in the long run.
Are we ready to pass this tonight? Or do you want to use this as a first reading?
Well, it's interesting.
I
I
think the
don't,
quicker you get it on the books.
but the point you just made, there is no
None.
penalty.
No.
So I don't know, Eric, how do you feel if we treat this as a first reading? I would like to let the businesses know. I mean, there's no requirement today and we're going to 3 months. I mean, and I don't disagree with what you're trying to do. I just wonder, it's like, oh, the council passed this thing. We had no requirement and now it's every 3 months.
And what if I don't?
Right. I
Really
just
nothing.
think there's some things that we should address in this. That's what I think. So if we could do it as a first reading, I think that would be better, and then address some of those issues when we bring this back.
All right. So,
I'm good with that.
Item 7.3, municipal management software. And while they're getting set up, so if you guys have any questions or concerns about the fog, do reach out to staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In the interest of time for tonight, I'll just provide the presentation. Verbally, we'll skip the PowerPoint. As you've seen most of it before, you see most of it in the work session last month. So real quick, I'll just go real quick through the background. What the software will provide, just a quick overview of civic systems, and then the estimated cost split. And we can put that on the, oh, never mind. She already has it on the screen. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so currently the city and New Richmond utilities use 27 different platforms and applications to conduct operations, many of which are obsolete and inefficient. There's a lot of manual, redundant data entry. Oftentimes when you want to, like payroll, for instance, is done twice on the utility side. Once when it's put into the utility system and once when it's manually put into Workhorse. So there's a lot, we waste a lot of time with simple database management. So a new management system will improve efficiencies, streamline payroll, processing, AP, accounts receivable, budgeting, project management, things like permits. Just about every front-facing thing that we do, it can improve. We'll have real-time information, better situational awareness and decision-making, especially on the financial end. A lot better financial management control and analysis for the finance department and for department heads, so they always know what position they're at relative to budget and have more tools to be able to spend their money more efficiently, effectively. Integrated workflows, that's a really big thing. So if we put in data into one, or an invoice or any piece of information into one part of the system, then that's it. After one point of entry, it's in the system and everyone else can access it, manipulate it, and do whatever they need to do with it. Instead of putting, you know, the same invoice, the same piece of data into the system multiple times at all of these different points, because none of our systems right now talk to one another. So as Rand discussed with you last time, Civic Systems, this is a software that staff is recommending because it's developed specifically for cities and smaller municipalities. It's based in Wisconsin. Over 200 cities and villages in Wisconsin currently use it. It's a true fund accounting software. So that means that unlike on the utility side, where we have a system that's made for small business, this utility and the city would be able to talk to one another. There's a knowledge, so Civic Systems, since it's made in Wisconsin, it's tailored for Public Service Commission requirements, which again would help out a lot on the utility side.
So in the essence of time,
Sure.
I think have we already approved this? And so is this just a status?
No, this would be, so Rand kind of gave like an introduction to it, but this has been something that's been, we're looking for the approval tonight. Rand covered the basics during the work session, and it is something that was postponed in 2020. So you've heard about it before.
Yeah, that's
just
what I'm
during
trying
the
to.
past.
That's what I thought. I thought we had already approved this. It was like.
So did I.
Yeah.
So to that end, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the expenditure for this software as it has been presented.
All right, there's a motion to approve the municipal management software. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I will discuss the fact that the software is $203,000. The annual cost is that part of this motion also. So that would be one continuous motion, and then we would approve whatever they come up with every year, 40,000 for this coming year. So we would have the
Maintenance fees.
maintenance
that type
fee
of stuff.
is being approved by this motion also.
Software licensing, yep.
Joel, I want to ask you, it
Is that right,
says,
Mike?
I'm sorry?
That's right.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. Joel, I want to ask you, so it says year one cost, really it means upfront.
Correct.
Year one is
Startup
is to
cost.
acquire it. And just out of curiosity, what are we spending, this $40,000
Mhm.
annual cost after year one, what are we spending now roughly for the
Um,
software that we have?
So on the city side, it's, what did I come up with? 12,895 or something like 12,800 something a year for the ones that this would replace. So like Workhorse and iWorks, Dynamics on the utility side.
But the $28,000 city cost after year one is not a complete plus. It's part of a plus. In other words, it's replacing of that $28,000 city cost,
Mhm.
it's replacing $12,000 to $13,000 we're spending. right
Correct.
now.
Yeah. Better part of 13,000.
And then payroll, are we going to an automated time system?
Yes.
Time clock?
Any other discussion? Call the roll?
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 7.4 is the PD access control SALTO locks.
So I have this one as well. So this was originally approved in the 2020 CIP. And this is just the enhanced access control for the police department building, similar to what we have right now at the Civic Center and the library with key card or fob access control. And this would replace currently the keyed locks at the police department buildings. And it is important to note that if the police department is ever expanded or addition ever happens or whatever, that those locks can then be just placed on the different doors. You know, so if the layouts change, the locks can change where they're located. There's nothing that fixes them there.
Joe, curious to ask you, so this is the police department.
Yep.
I know there's been discussion about the fire department. Does it make sense for us to look at both of those? Maybe there's some cost savings about doing both of those at the same time.
We actually have a quote for both of them. The fire department locks will be brought forward at the next meeting. That one was just not, didn't meet the time limit, but yeah, we already
Okay.
have that worked out.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions?
And so we're looking for a motion on that?
Yes.
I will offer a motion that we approve the purchase of the SALTO locks for the police department as outlined.
All right, there's a
I will second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve the police department access control SALTO locks. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 7.5, public workspace needs analysis.
So Eric Evenson, our Director of Public Works, will actually take the next several items. Several of these went to the Public Works Committee or the Utility Commission here in the past week. So Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, we went out for proposals for the space needs analysis. Basically, what that would do is look at our existing public works buildings, public works shop, electric shop, water shop, possibly the police impound facility, well number 6, and then also look at, we are storing a large number of equipment at the garage at the BB building, looking at that space that we're losing possibly this year. And so the study would look at our needs currently and see if there's a better way, more efficient way to utilize our existing infrastructure as far as storage, as far as staffing, that sort of thing. And then the study would also look at our future needs, the city's needs as far as staffing and equipment and buildings in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So hopefully come up with a good plan in place to move into the future as far as our public works spaces. We received 4 proposals, from HSR, SEH, Cedar Corporation, and Ayers Associates. We came together as a committee and reviewed the proposals. We had some questions on the proposals, so Noah, after the fact, asked for some examples of similar space needs analysis studies that they had done. There was a little bit of concern with the HSR proposal, as it seems like they mostly deal with educational institutions, and the example that they provided was also for an educational institution. So there's a little bit of concern there. We didn't want to spend that amount of money and then end up with a product that we're maybe not going to use or not happy with, and then have to turn around and do something additional. So after going before the Utility Commission and Public Works Committee, who we recommended and they approved going forward with Cedar Corporation, we felt provided an example that most met the outcome that we were looking for and the plan that we were looking to complete. So it'd be our recommendation to move forward with Cedar Corp at $35,950.
Eric, I'm curious. So and I understand the concept of low bid's not necessarily the right bid, but just really briefly, what stood out about Cedar Corp versus, when I see a $15,000 bid for HSR, something looks really different there. SEH, what was the kind of the overriding reason why you why you're recommending Cedar Corp?
The example they provided us pretty much hit everything on our scope that we asked for in the RFP, as far as examining the existing facilities, finding a more efficient plan and layout to utilize those systems, and then to look 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the future and plan for that, and come up with some options for those future plans. So their example pretty much hit what our scope was, where the others we felt didn't quite hit that scope.
Eric, I have a question about SEH. Was SEH's estimate in the packet for the Utility Commission and the Public Works?
Yes.
What made SEH different than Cedar Corp?
We just
Or lesser
felt
than?
that. Yeah, we felt that their example didn't quite hit, all the levels of that scope that we were looking for. Not that they possibly couldn't do, a good job on this. We just felt like the example provided didn't hit where we were looking for our final product.
I just would think SEH would have some experience in that area, especially dealing with the city in Richmond, but that's just my opinion.
And a couple items I would add.
I don't disagree with that.
For Cedar Corporation, some of their recent clients that, again, when we checked references, just in the last few months, they've worked with City of Menominee and City of Hudson on some similar projects. We were impressed with those. The other one is the timeline. Knowing that the BB building may potentially come down, the fact that this project would be wrapped up by late July, where the timeline for SEH was going to be more in the October range.
Oh,
And so if we look at potentially losing that cold storage space and what do you do, I think it's also worth just from a timing aspect. So
okay. I did not know that. I apologize.
All right, any other questions?
I would make a motion that we go with Cedar Corp for our space needs analysis study.
All right, there's a motion to go with Cedar Corp for the analysis. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
All right, and that motion passes. Item 7.6, Public Works Committee recommendation, the 2022 plow truck bids.
Yeah, me again. So we received, so the plow truck was bid as, I believe and Dave can chime in if I get this wrong, as the chassis and then the plow package and equipment that go with the plow truck. So we received 2 bids for the actual truck, and then we received 2 bids for the equipment. And our recommendation would be to go with both of the low bids on both the truck and the equipment. The low bid for the truck, there was a couple items that did not meet spec, but Dave said they were real minor items and that they really wouldn't make that much of a difference. It was pretty minor. And so his recommendation was to move forward with both low bids. And I believe this truck was budgeted for already in the CIP.
Is there any questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation of the Public Works Committee and city staff going with the low bids for both the 2022 plow truck and the dump box and plow accessories.
All right, there's a motion to go with the low bids. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
I'll second that.
Second, any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Lindell? Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 7.7, Public Works Committee recommendation surplus equipment. And it's my understanding the safety trailer will be pulled off because the fire department is still looking to see if they have a need for that.
I would make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Public Works Committee to deem these items surplus equipment with the exception of the safety rescue trailer.
All right.
I'll
So,
second that.
there's a motion and a second to go with the recommendation minus the trailer that it declared the stuff surplus. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Lindell? Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
And that motion passes. Item 7.8, Utilities Commission recommendation, adaptive management engineering firm selection.
Yeah, so this is to do a plan that will help us go towards phosphorus compliance at our wastewater treatment facility. This plan has to be approved by or sent to the DNR by January of this coming year. So we went out and got 2 proposals from SEH and MSA, and this one's kind of opposite of the previous proposal we talked about, where we got 2 really good proposals. We had both firms come in and did an interview, and they both did an excellent job. At the end of the day, we felt like both firms could do a really good job on this plan, and we would get an excellent product. It came down to just SEH was at around 81,000 and MSA was at 59,000. So quite a bit of cost savings in that. So our recommendation would be to move forward with MSA at the fee of $59,000 for the adaptive management plan.
Offer a motion that we approve, and this is a utilities project, but that we approve the recommendation. Sorry, I got to get back to the right page. For the bid with MSA in the amount of $59,000 of entering into this adaptive management agreement.
All right, so the motion to approve the recommendation for the adaptive management engineering firm, 59,000. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that motion.
It's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Eric, where do I see the bid number? Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. For 81,800. Is there any explanation why they were so different? Same scope, same bid, same project. I mean, is SEH planning on spending a lot more time on it? I'm just curious about that because it was quite a difference in the bid sizes.
Right. Yeah, I guess I couldn't give you a good answer how they came up with that number. Like I said, in the interviews, the scopes seemed very similar, and everything, it seemed pretty close.
You consider it apples to apples as far as what
Yes.
they were bidding on?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Lindell?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 7.9, Utility Commission recommendation, Water Department truck bids.
Yeah, so we solicited some bids for a truck for the water department. It was my understanding two of the firms that we tried to solicit from didn't feel that they could supply the truck in time. So we received one bid from Bernard's for $31,193.80. I think the budgeted amount in the CIP was at $45,000. So it would be our recommendation to move forward with the bid that we received.
I would make a motion that we accept the bid from Bernard's Northtown for the 22 Ram pickup for $31,193.80.
All right, there's a
I'll
motion
second
to
that.
approve. There's a motion and a second to approve Bernard's bid. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Abstain.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 710, Park Board recommendation, Mary Park Fishing Pier.
And so this would replace the fishing pier that was damaged and removed earlier from Mary Park. We received a bid on installing a new fishing pier for $38,249 from Waterworks Docks and Boat Lifts. I believe the majority of the funds will come from insurance money and grants, and the park board will be responsible for about $11,000 of the project. So it would be our recommendation to move forward with Waterworks Docks and Boat Lifts for installation of the new fishing pier.
All right, is there any questions?
I just, and Craig, maybe you can speak to this, not so much the pier, but the boat landing itself.
Mhm.
Is that changing?
Well, the
as part of this project?
whole landing area, this is not part of this, two separate projects,
This
Right,
is just the
we-
pier.
just the pier.
Okay.
We just found out
Oh, I have
we
a
did
question.
receive additional grant funding for the boat ramp. So that project is in the works to go out for bids, but hasn't been bid yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Craig, on page 10 where they've got the diagrams,
Mm-hmm.
so I think I'm looking at the fishing pier. Is that riprap that surrounds it, or am I looking at the right thing? Maybe I'm not even looking at
It looks like a bunch of rocks.
Yeah, no,
Oh, okay, never mind. Wrong
look
project.
to the top of the page
Yep.
of that. I've utilized the boat ramp drawings to to bid this project, so
Oh, okay.
All right, so back to the-
Never mind.
Yep.
tried to
back the
use some
fish-
efficiencies
Any
to
questions
not
about the
recreate the
fishing
wheel.
pier?
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we accept the bid of $38,249 to construct the new fishing pier submitted by whoever that is.
Waterworks, docks, and boat lifts.
Waterworks, Docks and Boat.
All right, so there's a motion to approve the bid of $32,000 for the Mary Park Fishing Pier. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion and second, any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 711, Park Board recommendation, disc golf license agreement.
So Mayor Horn and City Council, this item went to the Park Board at their most recent meeting. As you're aware, the city-owned property kind of near the compost site was previously approved as a location for the disc golf course. The Newman family owns the abutting property. They have a wooded area that they currently don't farm and are willing to allow the city to utilize that as part of the disc golf course. And so included in your packet is the license agreement that was prepared by the city attorney. In the future, if Newman sold the property or for whatever reason didn't want the course there, didn't want people utilizing that, that could be, this agreement could be terminated by either party. So if that were to happen, and if there's a disc golf basket that's located out on that property, the basket would have to be relocated. But otherwise, they're happy to have people enjoy the property there. It makes the course a little larger. Again, the course would also be used not just for disc golf, but hopefully for skiing in the winter, walking, et cetera. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Do people play disc golf in the woods?
Yeah. Most courses are somehow threaded through woods.
That doesn't encourage me. And just to gain access to this site, is it through the driveway to the, how do you get to it?
We're working on that now. We've got emails into the DNR to kind of establish a parking area on top of the landfill. So you would park on the very northern end of the property in the north west corner.
Yep.
And then the first couple holes would be just down from that parking lot, and it would go out in an easterly way.
So the way you envision it right now, do you turn in? Would you turn in off of whatever that street is?
Yeah,
there?
there's an exit and entrance right now. So we were.
That you would use for the compost site.
No. There's the next one down. That's a
Okay, there is
utility
another.
entrance.
Okay.
It's a utility
to the north,
entrance
to the
to mow
north.
in there and that kind of
Yes,
thing.
to the north.
We would hope to use that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Noah. We would hope to use that in the long run for a parking area for the disc golf.
Okay.
And we're working with the people that we need to work with to get that happen, get that done.
Yeah, so the park board would still approve the design yet for the course. This really lets the designer know how much real estate they have to work with, for the final design.
It was an area where if you visually look at what's going on out there, you can clearly see where the farming stops and these woods begin. We just kind of assumed all along that was going to be part of the city land that we've already owned, and there was a chunk that wasn't. And then, of course, Jim dove into it, and Jim figured out to go to the Newmans and get an agreement with them. So it's just land that visually looks like it's supposed to be part of it, and it's not. So it's just a lease.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve this disc golf license agreement with the Newman family. I think it is.
Yep,
All right, so there's a motion to approve the license agreement. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
yes,
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
Yes.
And that motion passes. Item 712, Park Board recommendation, Nature Center renaming.
So Mayor Horn and City Council, the park board has recommended renaming the Nature Center to the Sather Nature Center as a tribute and a thank you to the Sather family for really being integral in the creation of that park. This is the 50th anniversary of the Nature Center. Irv Sather was very instrumental, and as was Mary and even their kids, designing a lot of the first trails and there, removing buckthorn. And as we look to do some improvements to the park, we felt that it was fitting to name the Nature Center after the family. So the recommendation from the park board would be to name the park the Sather Nature Center.
Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion that we approve changing the name of the Nature Center to the Sather Nature Center.
I will second that.
And there's a motion and a second to rename Nature Center to the Sather Nature Center. Is there any discussion?
Just this, I think it would be awesome, Noah, if we had something there that people could read. Why, how many times do you go to a park and it's got a name on it or something? It's like, why?
Yep.
To have something that talks about the contributions that Irv and Mary have made to this community.
Excellent idea. And that's part of the motion?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion?
No, I just want to, we've been talking about this for a while, last couple, 2 or 3 years. Doing something for Irv and Mary and the family, knowing his experience and what he did to start the Nature Center and his involvement early on in the Nature Center. We thought that it would just be a perfect opportunity and a perfect place to recognize Irv and the family. And so I'm just proud that the park board went out and kind of did that kind of thing, and I think it's very fitting. So that's all I want to say.
Very good. All right, we do have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
And don't tell Irv, just so you know.
Evidently, Alderman Montello was not called upon.
Whoopsie
He would
daisy.
like to vote on this.
Yeah, It feels like I'm a kid
Alderman-
again. I'm waiting to
I'm
get fed. Nobody called my
I've
name.
been
I say
doing
yes.
really good, you guys. There's a lot of motions. Alderman Montello.
Yes.
Would you like to vote
Motion
twice?
passes yet again. Item 713, Richmond zoning ordinance proposed amendments.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Due to the essence of time, I have the next two items that came from the Planning Commission. Both city staff and Planning Commission recommended approval. I will go through each of those items in detail if you would like, or I would entertain a motion because I know Mike Montello likes to get that done right away. So I'm going to leave this up to you guys this time.
Well, I think the question I've got for you, Beth, can you tell us really what the meat? I mean, I see, it's talking about structures that are small. I mean, there's some specific things we are kind of trying to deal with here, right?
Yes, so with the zoning ordinance, as we all know, it kind of ebbs and flows and it changes as time goes on and as things change. The issues that we have or the changes that we have before you this evening are really changes that came about from working with the 2015 ordinance and from some comments from developers. This one in particular with the accessory buildings, Mike, is we get a lot of these smaller accessory buildings coming in for questions in the summer. We wanted to make sure it was crystal clear. If you're under 150 square feet, you don't need a permit, but here's what you'll need. If you're between 150 and 300 square feet, here's the information that you need. We just wanted to make that super clear in our ordinance. We can easily send this out to folks. So that was our first change. And I think maybe that's your main question.
It is. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to offer a motion that we adopt ordinance 553 and do we need to suspend anything?
Yeah.
And suspend those rules.
Yes.
All right, so there's a motion to adopt ordinance 553, suspend the rules. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
All right, for our 19th motion of the night, Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
That motion passes. Item 714, the Anderson Trust Extraterritorial Zoning Certified Survey Map.
So as you know,
I
the
would
city of Richmond, oh,
There's a motion to approve.
Yes, there's a motion to approve resolution 042101.
Wrong one.
we're on the
Huh?
ETZ CSM.
This is CSM.
This is the CSM 714.
Oh, okay.
But go ahead and make your motion to approve the Extraterritorial Zoning Certified Survey Map.
I will make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
And I'm going to second it with the conditions, the three conditions that are outlined.
The three conditions.
Thank you,
correct?
Mike.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item 715, Resolution 0101, authorizing sale of real estate. You're up.
I would make a motion that we approve the resolution 042101, sale of land from 140th and Double G.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, this transaction actually closes tomorrow.
At 11:30? Beth,
No,
Something like
it's
that?
at 1 o'clock, Fred. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
Is this,
Yep.
just through discussion, is this the first time we've approved this actually?
No, we've approved the purchase agreement to move forward with this, but we have to approve a resolution for a sale of land for it to take actual place at the closing.
Okay, sorry. Go.
Call the roll.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell.
Yes. And that motion passes. Item 716 is the employee medical reserve account policies.
So Mayor Horn and City Council, I have a small handout I'll pass out to you just momentarily. And then we also do have it on the screen as well for Alderperson Kraft. The employee medical reserve account was previously discussed by the city council at the November work session in 2020. If you recall, earlier this year, a few staff representatives met with small groups of council members to kind of walk through some of the background on this. And so for the sake of time, I will go through it rather quickly. Really, the main pieces that we would be discussing tonight, one is the timing of the MRA transfer, just clarifying that that transfer is made within 30 days of retirement. The other piece is utilization of the MRA. And so the proposal would be to allow employees to utilize their MRA to assist a parent for, obviously, if they have medical appointments, medical care, and for additional time for bereavement if approved by their immediate supervisor. And then the other piece and kind of the main topic of discussion is looking at early retirement and the ability to allow a partial or prorated payout of or transfer of accumulated MRA balance to employees that are hired prior to 2017 based on years of service to the city of New Richmond. So including in your packet, we showed that what was the table that was previously used, which referenced the Wisconsin retirement system, which was based, you can see there's a column for years of service and going across horizontally is age. And so that percentage that you see in there would be the basically the reduction factor if an employee retired early. And that early retirement for general employees would be those who retire before the age of 65 with less than 30 years of service. And for protective employees must be 53 years old and have at least 25 years of service, or if they have less than 25 years of service, they must be 54. The small staff committee that we had put together over a few months looked at the existing proposal, and you'll see in your packet kind of shows eliminating those first two columns, basically starting at age 57 with a minimum of 15 years of service to the city of New Richmond. So on the following page, you can see the proposal basically just shows the clean copy, kind of that blue version, and this would be on page 4 in your handout. The bottom half of page 4 also shows the WRS table for protective class, and you'll see on the next slide it shows the proposal again would be taking out age 50 and 51, and then decreasing the percentages by a few percentage points. So then you can see what that clean copy would be, would really be starting age 50, 52. One of the concerns when it comes to the medical reserve account is the financial liability for the city. So over the years, the City Council and Utility Commission have not set aside sufficient funds over the years to meet that future liability, which does represent a significant expense. So you'll see at the bottom of page 6, just shows all current employees based on the value of their MRA balance as of 2021. So you can see We have 30 current employees who have no balance at all. So the majority of those are employees hired after 2017 who have not been utilizing their MRA, as well as some employees who don't put time in their MRA. They've just been utilizing their vacation time. On page 7, we show a bar graph just showing what has been set aside by both the utilities and by the city, as well as what the MRA balance is for those who would be at that normal retirement age just within the next 5 years. So that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to retire, but it means that they're either going to have that 30 years of service for a general employee, or at least be the age of 65. So we also wanted to look at run some kind of hypotheticals to say, okay, what is the realistic cost that we're looking at? Because obviously we don't know when folks are going to retire. And so just kind of for the sake of argument, we put an estimate together, recognizing that we have 5 employees who are currently at the normal retirement age. We have 19 employees that are currently age 50 or older who were hired prior to 2017 and are not yet at the normal retirement age. So our assumptions that we used for the calculation was that employees would either work until the normal retirement age or retire early at the age of 61. So for this hypothetical, we ran the numbers that, if you're currently 63, we're going to assume that you're going to work till you're 65. However, if you're 52, we don't know when you're going to retire. You could retire in your 50s, you might retire in your 60s. We picked 61 just because we felt that was kind of a fair number to make. We also assume no promotions or demotions. So again, if an employee 5 years from now receives a promotion, their salary may go up. The value of that MRA balance would also go up. And we assume that their MRA balance wouldn't change. So it's not to say that there's an employee who has 800 hours accumulated over the years. They may have some medical challenges in the upcoming year, and they may draw that balance down. And then we also factored in a 1% cost of living adjustment each year. And so again, we don't know, some years wages may be flat, some years it may be a 2% increase, et cetera. But we use a 1% just for the sake of argument. So we looked at what would this scenario cost. So under the existing handbook, that cost to the city and utility combined is just under $600,000. Going back to utilizing the WRS table, increases that liability by $108,000. The staff proposal, by eliminating some of those columns and making it that 15 years of service for general employees, is slightly less than the WRS table. It would still be an increase basically of $104,000. Under that scenario, we would have 12 employees who would reach normal retirement age, 7 who would retire early, and 5 who are already currently at the normal retirement age. So at the bottom of page 8, you'll see kind of a breakdown between the city versus the utility. So again, the city currently has set aside $44,000 under the existing handbook. Again, assuming this hypothetical, that cost to the city would be that $418,000. Going back to the WRS table, or similar to the staff proposal, increases that cost by about $11,000. And then looking at the utility side, funds set aside is at $156. Under the existing handbook, the cost would be, again, under this hypothetical, would be that $178. Going back to the WRS table would potentially increase the cost to the utility, in this case by about $100,000. And again, this is just one calculation. You could run various models based on retirement age, again, not knowing when folks may retire. Final things for the council to consider. Really the city council sets the policy that they feel is in the best interest for the city. Really after Act 10 was passed in 2011, employees do not have the ability to negotiate. So really the city council, at any time, whether it's today, whether it's 2 or 3 years from now, they could change the policies. One question for the council to consider is also, how do you intend to pay for that liability? How much do you start budgeting for and setting aside? And ultimately, looking at the existing policies, looking at what is being discussed here tonight, Do we feel that it's fair to current and future city employees? So happy to answer any questions you have. I know it's a lot to discuss here tonight, but I'll turn it back to Mayor Horn.
Well, I want to ask some questions if I can. So really, there's three things that are being proposed. The timing of the MRA transfer, which as I understand it, the existing policy or the practice has been to try to take some time and spread that payout out when an employee retires. So number one, the ask is within a reasonable period of time, which I then further read within 30 days of retirement, which I think is an absolute that should happen. Okay, so I'm just going to say that. Issue number two, utilization of MRA. The proposal really is to add the ability for employees to utilize their MRA to assist a parent and for additional time for bereavement if approved by their supervisor. So they currently cannot do that. So this would add that benefit to the use of the time. The third one has to do with early retirement, and quite honestly, I think that has gotten the majority of the focus in the discussions that we had a couple months ago. And a couple of things, I've been thinking about this a lot in the last couple months, and I'm assuming Sarah's not on the phone tonight.
She's running the slides, actually. Yep.
Oh, she's running the slides. Well, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I asked you a question a while ago about what is your, you did a little bit of checking, and the percentage, not like a hard number, of public employees that offered an MRA type benefit and a private one. Can you just speak to that?
I can very, very broadly. So I didn't do a ton of digging on that. In terms of private companies, I wasn't able to find really any that offer that type of a benefit. And public employers, and most of them have been starting to kind of phase them out.
Thank you. As I understand it, whenever the MRA in the early days, because we're really having a hard time determining when it started, but in the early days, this was a bridge. And I think Alderman Kraft, you can speak to this, that the MRA was really a bridge for disability. It was a policy that encouraged employees to set some time aside, that if they had some type of sustained illness, and there was no disability policy offered at the time, this could bridge that. Is that correct?
That was the intention when we moved from the separate vacation and sick accounts to a PTO account and the medical reserve. So medical reserve really was intended to, you're correct, bridge that gap and replace their income if they're not able to work until a short or long-term disability policy picked up. So the city did, when we switched to the medical reserve account, did then start offering a city paid benefit of short-term disability that would get employees to that 90 days, and then at 91 days, long-term disability would take over. So we previously had offered that as an employee paid benefit, but when we switched to the MRA accounts, we offered it as an employer paid benefit. So that's correct.
Thank you. I think that there's a number of things that are troubling to me. I was reminded during the discussion we had with some staff of the city that this was something that we adjusted in 2017 when the handbook was changed. And I was reminded of that during our discussion. Isn't something that I really kind of had a hard remembrance about, but I was reminded of that, something that got changed in 2017. Since that time, in the last 4 years, we've had a couple of employees who have retired, and the rules weren't changed for those individuals. Whether it would apply to them or not, it's not clear to me. I know we've had at least another employee who has just retired, made provisions to deal with their MRA, understanding the policy was what it was. The first two parts of this, the timing of the MRA transfer, I completely support. Broadening the use of the MRA utilization, I completely support. What I don't support, and for those employees that were sitting there that day, and one happens to be in attendance here tonight, I thought I could see kind of some adjustment to the graph that we're using. I'm not saying that right, the table, the chart. But actually, I've been thinking about it. I don't think it's fair to the people who have left their employment with the city of Richmond that retired in the last 4 years. We changed the rules in 17. Now the ask basically is to change it back, and I'm not sure why. The MRA policy is unbelievably generous. That's not anybody's fault. It is. As our current HR director said, this is something that's completely out of favor in public employment and really non-existent in private employment. The benefits there, we're not taking it away. I guess to somebody's mindset, that got taken away back in 17. I don't think you could make a good argument for reinstituting something that was changed in 2017 to make this more restrictive. And the last thing is, which is really kind of a side, the council has to address the unfunded portion of this liability. It's just not okay to have $44,000 of a potential, and I appreciate that, Noah, potential $418,000 the way it is today. And I understand it's kind of a best guess. I think that's probably pretty close. Interestingly enough, if the graph is changed, and again, I apologize if I'm not saying that right. If the chart we're using to determine payout for retirement, early retirement, I'm not sure that's the right word. We're really asking the utility department to spend $97,000 of their money, and the impact to the city, separate, is, as you said, $11,000. But I'm not sure why we need to do that at all. And last thing, and I promise I stop. The 6 employees that have over $50,000 of accumulated benefit in this, my guess is these are employees who all are on track to be able to retire at the current plan and get a complete payout of their money. Is that correct?
Yes, that'd be a fair statement.
Okay, so we're talking about much smaller balances.
Either for age 65, or they may already have that 30 years of service.
Okay, thank you. So back when we did change it back in 2017, it was not, we changed, we had the, you got a day a month for sick leave. And then you also, when we went to PTO, we just.
I think that was in 50. Mayor, again, Alderman Kraft can kind of speak to that, but I think those changes were earlier than 17. Is that right, Carrie?
We did not move to the PTO accumulation, I believe, until, I think that was effective in 17, actually.
Yeah, so the current handbook went into effect January 1 of 17. The handbook itself was really approved in sections over about a year and a half. So the PTO piece was addressed in late 2015. There were additional updates made to the handbook. The entire handbook itself was approved in December of 16, went into effect January 1 of 17. But it was a long process.
And my question really was, that particular issue about PTO, because I don't remember that, shame on me, was because it was a longer drawn out process, which is completely fine, but I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. Because what I was saying is when we switched all of this to strictly PTO, we all thought, at least I'll speak for myself, that we were going to continue to pay out at the WRS level. And that was kind of that compromise. Because it was politically bruising. It came to a tie vote. I broke the tie vote. And that was basically, that was the compromise, I'll say the grand bargain to get to where we were at. So we knew we needed to go to something different than what we were at. It was just not sustainable. And so that was the grand bargain we came up with at that time. But it was my assumption WRS would continue as that payout basis. So, and how it got changed, that's where we kind of lost track of. When it was changed in the employee handbook, we weren't aware until someone brought it to our attention that, hey, we're not getting paid out anymore. And when I was told about it, my comment was, what do you mean not getting paid out? It should be. I mean, we changed the PTO calculations, that type of stuff. But in our mind, or at least my mind, we hadn't changed out the WRS payout. We were basing it on that WRS table. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else's thoughts?
Mayor, if I can, this is Beth. I happen to be the one who presented at that meeting, and you're absolutely correct. That was the compromise, that that table would stay in and that our employees would get that if we were to switch over to PTO and that type of thing instead of sick pay. So you are correct. We were under the assumption that that would stay in there. How it got taken out and how it got.
Number one. And number two, I think that if, so look at it this way. If the thought is, okay, we should broaden the statistical definition of how the money is going to be paid out in terms of, you can qualify it at a lower threshold, if I can use that expression. Then I think, a couple of things I'll throw out there. Then I think you do not change the utilization of MRA. In essence, it's plus, plus, plus. And I think that if I worked for the city of Richmond, I'd be real happy. I think the 30 days is a given. That just should have happened and should have been the policy all along. Utilization of MRA, I get the benefit of now I have an even broader examples when I get to use it. And I think that, again, lowering the retirement threshold, going backwards on the retirement threshold, which changed in 2017, at least we'll go with the date of the employee handbook. I don't understand the rationale for that, especially considering the level of the unfunded liability today.
Well, I think we need to deal with the unfunded liability. I brought that up last meeting with money that we get from the state for anything. I think should be written that way, and we should go back to the way we intended that when we originally took away sick leave, basically. So those are my feelings.
Well, I think too, that isn't the city competing with everybody else, private sector or public sector? That really doesn't matter in today's world. We're competing for the services of employees. We already have a pretty generous, I'd say really generous package in place. And if we were unable to retain employees because this didn't change, that's a different argument. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think, again, and I agree with Mike, that timing of the transfer should be a given, and the utilization, because of the age we live in, that has to change. But the early retirement, to change the way that's paid out, we're going into debt even further than we are now, and I don't think that's fair to the taxpayers.
When we made this change with the PTO, it was over $1 million unfunded. So taking that, we're at 700 something. So we've made some improvement there.
Carrie wanted to speak.
Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of context to the removal of the WRS table. So one of the things that happened when we were reviewing the handbook is we had discussions with staff, and we had discussions with the staff members that were responsible for making that transfer once people left under kind of that retirement status. And one of the difficulties that they were having in making that transfer was that the table that we currently utilized, or what was kind of stated in the handbook, was that we would reduce individual sick time payout based on the actuarial benefit factor or reduction factor that the WRS used. Unfortunately, that could take up to 12 months for the WRS to get us that information that we needed. So we couldn't actually make the reduction based on that reduction factor because we didn't have the information we needed to do so. So the reason that language was removed from the handbook was not to penalize employees or not to say that they couldn't retire. It was simply because we couldn't follow our own policy. So we actually removed that statement simply for the fact that we could not get that information in order to process these payments within 30 days. So the intent was never to remove the table for consideration of paying a benefit. It was to remove it because we weren't following our own policy of reducing it, if that makes sense.
What actually doesn't make sense, can you put that in layman's terms?
So what I'll tell you is that the Wisconsin retirement system defines retirement a specific way. And their normal retirement age is based off a bunch of different factors, but it's one of the things that you saw laid out in the chart that Noah shared or Sarah shared as part of that PowerPoint. So it could be age 65 if you have so many years of service. If you have 30 years of service, which, you know, in the federal government used to be called Rule of 90. If you have 30 years of service, you can retire at the age, I believe it's 57, they say, and still get a full retirement annuity. So the WRS says, if you retire at normal retirement age, we give you 100% of your pension benefit. If you retire before that, we are going to reduce it, and we're going to pay actuaries to tell us how we're going to create this formula for reduction. The way that our handbook was written said that we would reduce sick time payouts the same amount that the WRS reduced their pension if they retired early. We couldn't do that because we couldn't get that information from WRS in order to process that in 30 days. It would sometimes take them 12 months to get all of that information together to create that actuarial reduction formula. So it wasn't serving our purposes, which is the only reason we removed it from the handbook. Does that make sense, Mike?
Kind of.
So the fact that we have a printed WRS table, general category, on page 3, couldn't we just base it on that in years of service? Couldn't we just say city years of service? And that's
Well, and that
the payout?
that was one of the things that we had brought up to the group too, is that what we wanted to recognize, or what we were, when looking at historically where we were, that $1 million unfunded liability, which is really daunting, and like everyone has agreed, you know, we need to have an answer for that, and that's not something that we should be saddling the taxpayers with without a plan for paying for that. So there's understanding that we needed to have some kind of course correction, and then understanding that we were supposed to be grandfathering in all employees that were hired before January 1st of 2017, which grandfathering in to me means previous rules applied to them, new rules don't apply, which it doesn't sound like that's been followed. But that we also needed to look at, do we want to reward age, or do we want to reward years of service with the city? And I think we can agree that we want to reward years of service with the city of New Richmond and then the loyalty of our employees. And so that is kind of where I think the group, at least the employee group, was trying to come up with some kind of compromise for saying, okay, we recognize that years of service to the city of New Richmond should be a really important factor for whether or not somebody gets paid out any part of this benefit. So they moved that to 15 years. The WRS table was 5 years. It only required 5 years of service. So the city employees kind of moved that to 15 years. And then they also reduced kind of the payout levels at different areas. So I think what they offered up was somewhat of a compromise from what WRS used to say, and kind of what they were getting from the council feedback.
So let me put you on the spot, Carrie, just in essence of time, so we know we have a couple more items. What are you proposing? What do you support?
Honestly, I support the 30-day payout. So I think that's kind of, I think we all can agree that that's something that should be addressed and should be written very specifically, that there's no room for debate there.
Carrie,
Yes.
We can't.
take that from the top.
We can't understand, just slow your words down a little bit. It's just like, it's hard to hear, but if you could slow your words down a little bit so we can hear what you're saying.
Okay. I support the 30-day payout provision, or transfer. We'll call it transfer provision. I support, and it sounds like the rest of the council supports as well, broadening the use of MRA time, because that just organically decreases the unfunded liability.
Sure. Okay.
Remembering that staff have to elect to move their time now into the MRA. So it's not like we're letting them put this big amount in every year. It is capped at 40 hours per year. So there's only a small amount that they can actually put in. And then the third part is, you know, looking at, do we make a change to the current practice? And I do think that what the employees proposed is fair based on the discussion and the considerations that the council had. One of which was, we want to reward years of service with the city of New Richmond, not other public employment necessarily. We want to reward your service with us. And so they did increase that from 5 years to 15 years. And then they also reduced the actual payout amount from what it was in WRS. So is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. It doesn't put us in an amazing financial position, but I do think that we have made some significant progress in reducing the unfunded liability simply by changing how people can put time in the MRA and how they can use that.
Well, Carrie, just 2 points of correction. I think that when you said, I don't know if you said city employees or city staff, I'm not sure how you had that worded. I know that we were given a proposal by management, I guess is the way I'll kind of break it down, that was different than what city employees were asking for. In terms of the representatives they had that day at the meeting that you and I attended, they were asking for the WRS table.
Correct.
So that wasn't from
they
city
have
employees.
adjusted.
I'm sorry?
I said they have adjusted since then. I think they, after meeting with council members, they took the feedback that we gave them into consideration and they made some significant adjustments in what they originally proposed.
Okay, I guess I don't, is that the case, Noah?
So I know when we met with council, we had some different models, even looking at, starting at age 60, we had models at 25, 50, 75%, kind of more simplified, condensed version of this. The committee kind of, based on the feedback, didn't feel they could just come in and say, we just want the WRS table, hence kind of eliminating those first couple columns and going up based on that a minimum of 15 years of experience for the general employees.
So what we're looking at,
I believe it's the tables
on
on
page 3, the proposal general category,
page 4.
I thought it was this.
If you go to page 4, it summarizes
It gives a clean copy. It gives a,
clean copy of
what we
not only
think is
for
right.
employees,
I have
but
help
also
on the
for
screen
us as
too.
well.
Yeah, so what the committee that worked on this, it'd be that page 4, which Sarah has on the screen as well, starting at age 57 with 15 years of service. That would be at a 76% prorated amount. And then for the protective class, it would be at the bottom of page 5.
That's fine.
Again, it says proposal clean copy at the top of that. So
Yeah, and I think it's important that everybody understand what protective class is referring to. That's the police department.
yes, it'd be
That's
the
by
police
union.
department and the fire chief.
Okay, by union, well, as far as the police department goes by union, I think whatever that has to do with that, but that's what that's referring to. Carrie, you made an interesting comment about the gains that are made in the unfunded liability, reducing it.
Yes.
Okay, and so understanding that the proposal is to go in a different direction. You're aware of that?
Yes, that this potentially, with this proposal, that we would see an increase of about $100,000 over what the previous proposal, or I should say over what existing is. Yes.
And the-
I do,
and the-
I was just going to say, I do think the more that I have thought about it and the more people that I have talked to and the greater clarity I have gained, I do believe that the employees were, at least the ones that were hired prior to 2017, which is the only ones that this applies to, of course, they were told that they were going to be grandfathered in, that they were not going to see the impact that the employees hired after 17 were going to see. And I just feel like we owe them something in kind of making an adjustment there, not necessarily going back to what we.
Well, and of course, you understand that, I understand the, I guess kind of the point you're making, but utilization of MRA, expanding the boundaries, that's a big deal. I mean, that changes it dramatically what it can be used for. So that's.
It could, doesn't necessarily does, it could.
No, it does.
It
does. I mean, if we're,
You have to say
if we're-
it does. Their ability to use it for
Which is
something they do not have now. Well, I'm saying the point that Carrie made is, trying to, I guess the idea being that there was this promise that existed.
Yep.
And
there
the
was.
promise was taken away. If I can say it bluntly, I think I'm just going to use just plain language.
Yep.
Okay. And that, this changing this table at this point does go back in a different direction than the one we've really been trying to move in, and I'll say philosophically, okay? But changing the utilization of the MRA is a big deal. The 30-day thing, to me, I don't know why. I understand what you said, why that was an issue, but in my opinion, it never should have been an issue. Here's your money. You're retired, here's your money. That should have just been a given. But the utilization of the MRA is a big deal. That those folks that have this money set aside now have an ability to use it in ways that they could not use it before.
Yep.
And again, keep in mind, this is a policy that by and large, you're going to have a hard time finding in the private world at all. And in the public sector, you're going to have a hard time finding it. Well, that's a fact. And that comes from our HR director. So I think that there are common sense things we can do. Changing the utilization of MRA makes sense. Obviously, the 30-day payout makes sense. And I guess I'll just add this at the end. Keep in mind that we're being asked to commit the utility department. I don't even know if they've approved this, to increase their liability by $97,000 or $93,000. That's $97,000, sorry.
So the utility employees are still subject to the employee handbook, which is subject to council approval. The handbook itself hasn't been discussed by the utility commission.
But I mean, this is if I'm on the utility board, I'd like to know, I'd like a voice to make a recommendation relative to increasing my costs. We're doing that without any input from them. That's the point. And the majority of change is to the utility department. It's not to the taxpayers in general.
Correct. Under that hypothetical, just based on ages of employees, we're basically, again, hypothesizing that some of those employees would retire early at the age of 61. So again, not to say that the city costs may be higher or less, or same thing with the utilities.
So under a different scenario, there may be fewer affected utility and more
Correct.
affected
Yep. Just based
city
on what,
employees.
what numbers you want to plug into that scenario. But to Alderman Metellus' point, the utility commission has not discussed this.
And I guess the point that was kind of left off is we did this for the regular employees. The protective class hadn't been affected prior to this, correct? They still were paid out. Is that true?
No, they would still be, so their table's different, but unless the language is still
Right.
applicable to them.
But their table hadn't changed. So even though in the last few years, the regular employees weren't getting paid out, protective class was still being paid out?
No, they still would have been subject to this. Now, we haven't had a member of the police department retire since 2017 that this would have applied to, but they're still subject. Their table's different, but again, it goes back to the language of that actuarial reduction factor. So it may be a different age, it may be a different experience, but they're still subject to that.
Mr. Mayor, just to bring some clarity to this, there's 3 issues before us. I'm going to make a motion that we approve that the MRA transfer happens within 30 days of retirement. Okay, the eligible MRA payout, whatever we determine that to be, number 1, and number 2, that we would expand the utilization of MRA to include assisting a parent or for additional time for bereavement. So just those 2 items, I'm going to make a motion that we approve that.
All right. And so It's a valid motion. The motion on the floor is to go with the first and the second, the third payout in 30 days, and also to include, you can use the money for assisting
Increased
in
usage.
family members or the parents.
And then a brief.
Yep, in bereavement. And what I'm going to throw out there, so we'll see if there's a second to that motion. There can be a motion after this or even after this vote. So Mike wants to kind of piecemeal this out. So is there a second to Mike's motion to the payout in 30 days and the addition of parents and bereavement?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Call the roll on that.
Can I ask a
Sorry, go ahead.
question really quickly? That's okay, I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure that Mike's motion, I understand that it's just for the two issues, but it's not that we are saying no to the.
No decision has been made on
Not there
what
yet.
we're able to use,
Okay,
if
Okay.
at all.
That's an unresolved issue.
okay,
That I
Thank you.
presume is going to come in a forthcoming motion
okay.
from someone. He just wants to separate the issues that
Yes,
I'm guessing, or everybody's sensing there's agreement on some things, but not all of it. And he's trying to carve out where there's agreement.
okay.
Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Lindell,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
All right, and that passes. So then it gets down to leave it as it currently is, go with the recommendation from the committee staff, go with WRS tables.
Mayor Horn, may I say something?
You may.
This is Sarah, just for those who don't recognize my voice. So one point of just note that I will just say for the potential increased liability, by the other aspect to look at potentially as well is if you don't put something back in, are you going to have employees who potentially would be willing to retire early, who are no longer going to and are going to stay until they're eligible to get the full amount because that's the only thing that they have. And so you don't reduce the liability at all because now they're retiring when they can collect all of it instead of a prorated amount.
I don't understand this.
So Sarah's point is you may have an employee who, let's say you're 62. You may currently be planning to work till you're age 65 so that you don't lose that balance. Sarah's point is that if there is that prorated amount, there may be someone who would retire earlier.
Say that part again, what you just said.
So Sarah's point is that there may be, and again, this is the unknown, but there may be some employees that are not yet at that normal retirement age.
Based on the current draft.
Based on the current, yep,
Okay.
who are planning to continue to work until age 65 so that they receive that MRI transfer, who, if there is a prorated amount, may choose to retire early because they know that they would receive, a prorated portion. So I think Sarah I know we couldn't hear you well. Was that your point?
Yes, thank you, Noah.
I think if I understand you correctly, Noah, what you're just saying is that there could be individuals right now who they're at a zero payout.
Correct.
They were planning on working for a number of years, like your example was 3 more years, to get the payout. They'd be at age 65 and meet a time of service requirement. But if the rule changes in terms of how we determine they may retire tomorrow, and I don't figuratively mean that, and take a payout that they otherwise wouldn't be entitled to even a greater portion of if you did whatever for another 3 years, just again using your example. So I guess, Sarah, the point you're trying to make is, I guess I missed the first part of your comment, and it was that you're increasing the liability by doing that?
The incentive.
I'm just saying it's the potential, and I'm sorry you can't hear me very well. It's possible that you would actually be
reducing the liability by putting something back in, accepting some version of this table, because you might have individuals who are taking a partial transfer of funds as opposed to holding out for the full amount.
Correct. So I kind of piggyback off of that. Let's say you had an employee who's 60 years old, 20 years of service. They're not going to meet that 30. Right now, they may be planning to work till age 65. Let's say their balance is $30,000. They work another 5 years. Now that $30,000 might be $35,000. So I think, Sarah, to your point, by having something in there, that person may choose to retire early. You're still paying them something out, but it may actually be less than what you would be paying out in a few years from now if they work till age 65.
Well, and again, based on your example, just a couple of things, points to get clear in my mind. One challenge is if you had an employee that had a $30,000 balance, odds are they can't put any more money away.
Correct.
They're over, I don't know, is it 600 hours?
Depends on their hiring date, but yeah, for most employees, they're not putting more time into that. They're maxed out.
Right.
It would be going up based on
Their wage
their wage.
change.
Yep.
Okay. And then of course, okay, the difficult thing about what you just explained is we really have no idea how that might look in application.
Correct.
Somebody says, well, I've been with the city. Give me an example. If we use the clean category, and actually what I don't see in here is the current graph. The current chart is not in here.
It is. So the WRS table, general category.
It's not the current chart. No, the current chart the city's using that was approved back in 2017. That's the real simple chart. That's not in here. What the current rules are, we're looking to change from, that's the question that's being asked. The current rules that we were shown that day when we met with the city employees, that
What
group.
is the payout if you're 65?
Or 30 years of service.
What I'm trying to get to is that just using,
Dollar amounts that are-
well, but using his hypothetical example, if somebody is 60 years of age and could under the, well, the way it is today, you have to have, what's the minimum age and years of service that you can get 100% payout?
So today, if you were 57 years old and had 30 years or more of service, you'd be eligible for 100% payout.
Okay, so somebody who is 60 years of age and has 20 years of service,
And if they retired today, they would receive nothing.
okay, and so they have to get to age 65.
Yep.
Okay, so if you don't have 30 years of service, and I understand it's not 5 years of service, but if you don't have 30 years of service, I thought there was a payout at 25 years of service at 65, or 20 years of service at 65. I thought there was a payout under the current plan. At 65, if you had at least 20 years of service, I thought it was 100% payout.
If you hit age 65, is 100%.
And what's the minimum?
Even if you have less than
Right,
20 years.
but there is a minimum years of service.
5.
Yeah, because it goes back to 2017.
Well, no, I thought there was no, I'm just telling you, the chart that I saw, I don't remember seeing 5 years in there. I thought it was like 15 years of service. Somebody made a statement about 20 years.
Those were some of the tables we looked at, but it still is subject currently to that WRS table. It's just that if they don't have 30 years, or if they're not 65, they don't receive anything. But if you're someone that's today, if you're 67 and you have 20 years of service and you retire, you get 100%. That's
So
under the
Noah,
current.
Noah and Mike, I would clarify to say that we are not using the WRS table currently. We are using the WRS definition of normal retirement age. And their definition of normal retirement age means you are 65 years of age or older, or have 30 years of service. That's it. So that is the definition of normal retirement age. It is the age in which you can retire without getting a reduced benefit. So there really is no table we are using currently. We're using their definition of normal retirement age.
Correct. So you won't see that table in the handbook. It's just the language referencing the definition.
But I'm referring to the table because that's what I could see, what we're talking about, years of service and getting 100% payout and an age tied to that. So Carrie, the way you just explained that, if an employee has 30 years of service, well, first of all, let's start with this. If you have 30 years of service and you're 57 years of age, you've attained that. That, under the current rules, that's 100% payout. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
But if somebody has got 65 years of age and something less than 30 years of service, what's the payout?
As long as they have 5 years of service, they could get 100% because WRS says 65 years of age is normal retirement age. You will not get a reduced pension benefit as long as you have your 5 years of service, which is required for vesting. So you have to be vested in WRS in order to get a pension benefit. And if we're looking at WRS retirement, that is kind of those minimums, 65 years of age and 5 years of service.
The WRS table is anything with a 1 in it, which to Alderperson Kraft's point is that 30 years of service or that column for 65. So if you're 65, whether you've worked 7 years, 17 years, 27 years, if you're age 65 or older, currently you receive 100%.
Okay, I think the question to the council is, we leave it as is with just using the definition of 65 or 30 years of service, 100% payout, going with WRS tables, or going with the proposal, page 4, plain copy, years of service, and I'll throw in user service as city years of service. To me, that's kind of boiling down to the council. What option would you want to go with?
I would make the motion that we go with the proposed table, the clean copy here, 15 years of service.
What's on
Proposal of the staff.
page 4, protected class, regular employees?
Yep.
All right, so there's a motion to go with the tables that are on page 4, proposal clean copy, WRS table, protective class, and years of service being defined as city in Richmond years of service. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
The motion and a second, is there any discussion?
Before we vote on it, just want to point out this has to do with the competition thing again. Federal foam, I spoke with Melanie Rowe, maximum carryover, 80 hours, no matter how many years of service, plus your current year's accumulation. That's what you cash out with on termination. Phillips Plastics is still at 40 hours maximum, plus your current year. So that's the competition.
Well, those are private companies.
Any other discussion?
I work for a public company. Mine was 0. When I retired, I had 2,400 hours of sick leave that they paid me. So we're not all the same. And this is a compromise.
All right.
Maybe these guys can help me. I haven't been a part of any of these meetings, but I think maybe to help clarify, unless something's changing here, like our union contract, which I know we can't change tonight, but I think it follows the city handbook, and Carrie maybe, or Sarah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I pulled up our union contract, and currently, we talk about our employees that were hired prior to 2016 when our MRA was transferred, our MRA was transferred and we did the PTO thing.
It's 17, chief.
Okay. But anybody hired pre-2016 sick leave, it says in our contract, the payment will be paid out at 100% at the hours, current hourly rate. And then on January 2016, it went from January 2016 through January 1st of 2018, basically, where we have a thing in our contract that says anybody in that period of time can put that 40 hours into their MRA bank and will be paid out at 50% of that total accrued MRA hours. So if you had 600 hours in there, you'd get paid out 50% of those hours. And then the city handbook changed again for employees hired after January 1st of 2008, or 2018, excuse me, will not be paid for any accumulated MRA hours upon separation. So I think what we're looking at here is just the people that have MRA currently that were hired prior to the 2016 date.
Correct.
So
Correct.
any of these new hours that have been discussed, the 40 hours that are being put in there,
Is being
isn't
paid
really
out at-
on the table. So you're really talking about not adding to those. The hours that you add are for raises and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with it. That we're not looking at changing that, correct? That
Correct. This is
Correct.
just the dollars and the hours prior to 2016, 17, whatever that changed.
Yeah, so employees hired after 17 are not included in this, so.
Well,
Because
don't-
employees hired after 17 knew the rules going in. And that's what they accepted the position for. They said, that's the rules. I'm going to take that job. The people prior to that didn't do that. And they should have some entitlement of what they had coming in the first place.
So just out of curiosity, how do you justify what you did in 2015 then? I'm going to use your rationale for what the council did in 2015. How do you justify that?
Well, I think we
It's a
intended to,
rhetorical question.
yeah,
All right. Call the roll.
And this is on Alderman Kittle's motion. I have
That
Alderman
is correct.
and Alderman Kraft seconded. So calling the roll,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
yes,
Alderman Lindell,
No.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello.
no.
All right, and the motion passes 4-2. And communications miscellaneous.
If I can, Mayor, I'd like to congratulate Officer Shivery and K-9 partner Storm. They had their narcotics trials over the weekend, and she passed with flying colors.
Very good. Congrats. Item 9, closed session per state statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation in a big, long paragraph. Closed session per state statute 19.8